for others.
Yes.
You mentioned Rwanda and situations there. I thought it mentioned Voice of the Martyrs, which anybody that isn't on their mailing list should be, because that will really open your eyes to things that people are enduring today, right here and now.
Thanks for mentioning that. That is something well worth your looking at. It just gives you perspective, and it also gives you a better capacity to pray more specifically about situations that are happening. And we recognize that, things are getting worse for a period of time, but really it's a way of looking at a broader perspective. But I think it's significant, and this is important for us to see, that Paul didn't refer to his miracles that he went through, that he experienced. He doesn't refer to great sermons or to great answers to prayer. But he appeals to the stream of persecution and afflictions that he has suffered as actual evidence of his calling. He wasn't lifted out of these experiences in any supernatural way. But the fact is that he went through these hardships, and we should be encouraged in our own lives, in our own mix of sorrows, because we still, in spite of the fact that we may not have these physical torments and so forth and deprivations, we still have relational pain. We have physical pain in terms of disease, and we know about the frailty and the brevity of this earthly sojourn. We know that there is nothing really certain. Crushing telegrams, all kinds of dark surprises and difficult experiences. We're not immune to those things, and I think that's the thing we want to say. We never arrive at a pinnacle of faith whereby all of a sudden all the difficulties of life are somehow concluded. And so we see in these things then that there is an orientation that we must sustain. A cloud of witnesses. So we go back to Hebrews 11 just to revisit them and tie together those two categories. And there's a critical verse where that's marked off. This cloud of witnesses, of people who are martyrs. And a martyr, a witness, martyrion, is a word that means a witness. And it's one who was witnessed and born witness to the fidelity of God, even in trying circumstances. And in Hebrews 11, this cloud of witnesses, of men and women who have trusted God and have gone through changed circumstances, where it describes, for example, people who particularly going to verse 33, conquered kingdoms, performed acts of righteousness, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, from weakness were made strong, became mighty in army, put foreign armies to flight, women received back their dead by resurrection. And all of a sudden, there in verse 35, there's this change. Right in the middle of that verse, of course, remember, the verses weren't there in the original. So it just happens that this was a bad verse break. The verses and chapters aren't in the original, so it's good from time to time for you to ignore them. Because otherwise you're going to treat each chapter atomistically and not connect it with the material before it. So it's important for us to remember that. But at any rate, all of a sudden, there's a switch. And it says, after referring to women who received back their dead by resurrection, then it says others were tortured, not accepting their release so that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others experienced mockings and scourgings. Yes, also chains and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. There's a tradition about Jeremiah about being sawn in two. They were tempted. They were put to death with the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, ill-treated, men of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in deserts and mountains and caves and holes in the ground. And all these having gained approval. Who are these, all these? It's both those who overcame through changed circumstances and those who overcame through unchanged circumstances. All these are in the same category. Having gained approval through their faith, did not receive what was promised. because the things that are being promised are not going to be received in this life. I think it's an important and critical understanding that we embrace. We realize then that there are miracles and answered prayer that change circumstances, and they're going to be trusting God and clinging to His character in times of unchanging circumstances where the deliverance isn't there, where it does not happen. And the recognition that God is capable of using that adversity for a greater good. Again, we go to one of my favorite texts. It's 2 Corinthians 4, 16, 18. Anyone know that? I've quoted that to you dozens of times because it's one of my, I have. It's such an incredibly important, because I'm trying to shame you, yes. No, it's actually, I'm trying to encourage you to learn this because it's a perspective that in 2 Corinthians 4, when he says, therefore we do not lose heart. This is right after he's been talking about these things he's gone through that litany. We don't lose heart. He says, even though our outward man is perishing, and it is, and that's where I mentioned the fact that, your earth suit's wearing out fast. Faster than you might want to think it's wearing out. And that's why I always love it when people see you, you haven't seen them in 10 years, and they say, oh my, you're looking good. It's a lie. Age hasn't been kind to us. You look terrible, and so do I. If you were really honest, you'd say that. But instead, we always say, you're looking great. Not so. It's always depressing to see someone after. In fact, there was one guy I was supposed to meet, and this was after, maybe 15 years. And I was supposed to meet the guy in a hotel. And I said, where is he? I didn't recognize the guy when I saw him. Oh my God, that's him? Of course I didn't. Oh, you're looking great. No, I didn't lie. I couldn't bring myself to say you're looking good. But it was the sadness of that. And there is a sadness. That's not the way things were meant to be. We were not meant to grow old. We were not meant to become feeble. We were not meant to become sick and weak. None of those things are what we were meant to be. We were meant to be people who would be eternal in that our physical bodies would not have worn out. But the blast of the fall brought about this great distortion in which we changed ourselves. And that the physical death and wearing out is actually an outward sacrament of, in this case, a negative sacrament of an inward and invisible disgrace. And so what we have here is this physical death that illustrates this condition where the world is not right because of the blast of sin. Nevertheless, it's true that some people look better than their years, but as I often like to put it, you're 40 years old, someone says, my word, 40, you don't look a day over 30, you feel pretty good. But when you're 100 years old and they say you don't look a day over 90, it doesn't matter. You see, there are just some people. And I could honestly tell this one woman, I saw her in my Sunday school class just on Sunday. And, I've known her for over 20 years. She hasn't changed a bit. She just looks old. And you're just not going to look any older than that. So I could honestly say you haven't changed a bit. But there it is. At any rate, shame on me. No, it's true. Yeah. Happens to all the best of us. But Paul says that even though our outward man is perishing, yet our inward man is being renewed day by day. And therein lies your hope. Your inward man is being renewed. There is that in you which is forever young. Even now, there is that in you which will not age, which will not wear out, which will not decay, which will go unchanged into the presence of the living God. And ultimately, when we are in His presence, and ultimately then resurrected, then even the outward will conform to the inward. And we will be raised, and we will be people who never age, who never get sick, who never die, and all those things, and there will no longer be that pathos and that loss. So our inward man is being renewed day by day. And he speaks about this fact that we look at this concept of how our lives are really, we're looking at a contrast far beyond all comparison. Because the outward things are being destroyed, but the inward things are going to be renewed. And that is, I think, an important perspective. Any comments on that so far? Anything I've said? Yes, Robert.
What is the thing that you have said that we will either interpret our circumstances or we'll interpret God by what is the
Yes. I think it's a very important distinction. You have a choice. And in this choice, you will either view your circumstances in light of God's unchanging character. His character never changes. The immutability of God is a very important